Hello everyone. Today is the second video on this first part, his first flight. In the previous video, my dear children, we discussed about a young seagull who is on the ledge of a mountain and who is willing to fly but is very afraid of flying. His parents, his brothers and sister, they have already flown away, and now this seagull is all alone on that mountain. His parents are repeatedly encouraging the seagull to fly, but that seagull has no guts to fly. The seagull could see his family members on the opposite plateau, enjoying the food, enjoying the beautiful weather. And since 24 hours, the bird is all alone and the bird is very, very hungry. Now let's see what happens in the further portion of the chapter. So let's start the explanation part.
Well, children, in the previous video, we saw that the young seagull, when he saw his mother tearing a piece of fish, the young seagull became very excited for that food because he was very hungry, and the sight of the food maddened him very badly. And now let's see what happens. Ga, 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 he cried, begging her to bring him some food. Ga, kola, she screamed back derisively. Now what is happening? The young seagull is literally begging her mother, is crying and asking her mother to bring him some food. Mother also responded in her own voice, but that response was a bit kind of, making fun of. In a mocking way, she responded. But he kept calling plaintively, and after a minute or so, he uttered a joyful scream. So he kept on begging, for that food, and although he was a bit sad because he saw that his mother was not flying towards him, so he was a bit sad. But just after a minute, what happened? That young seagull became very happy and he started screaming, out of that joy. And what was the reason? His mother had picked up a piece of the fish and was flying across to him with it. And the best part was, the mother was flying towards him with that piece of fish in her beak. He leaned out eagerly, tapping the rock with his feet, trying to get nearer to her as she flew across. Now this young seagull was so excited after seeing his mother flying towards him with that piece of fish in her beak, that this young seagull started tapping the rock with his feet, and he was so eager to get that food, he started leaning out. Okay, झुकना आगे की ओर. But when she was just opposite to him, she halted, her wings motionless, the piece of fish in her beak almost within reach of his beak. Now what happened? See, as the mother came very close to this young seagull, as the mother was just opposite the seagull, she stopped all of a sudden, and her wings became motionless. She stopped flapping her wings. And she was very close to that young seagull, but not so close that young seagull would get that piece of fish. He waited a moment in surprise, wondering why she did not come nearer, and then, maddened by hunger, he dived at the fish. Now, this young seagull, literally, he was in a state of surprise. He was thinking, what happened to my mother? She is so close to me, but she is not coming to me. मेरी माँ मेरी इतने नज़दीक है, लेकिन मेरे पास क्यों नहीं आ रही? But as this young seagull was very hungry, literally without thinking anything else, he dived at the fish. With a loud scream, he fell outwards and downwards into space. And the moment the young seagull dived at the fish, now the seagull was not on the ledge. He was in the open air. He was in the space. Space here means not on the ledge or not on the plateau, not even flying over the river, but somewhere in between. Then a monstrous terror seized him and his heart stood still. And what happened? This was the first time she left that ledge, and she was very, very, very the young seagull was very frightened, and literally, a kind of terror, took control over him. And literally he was thinking that now this would be his last moment. He would definitely die. He could hear nothing, but it only lasted a minute. But this feeling, this monstrous terror and all these things happened for a while, okay? The next moment he felt his wings spread outwards. The wind rushed against his breast feathers, then under his stomach and against his wings. He could feel the tips of his wings cutting through the air. He was not falling headlong now. He was soaring gradually downwards and outwards. He was no longer afraid. Now what happened? The moment this young seagull was coming down, all of a sudden his wings were spread out, and the moment his wings were out, what happened? He could feel that wind rushing, against his breast feathers. He could feel, that wind under his stomach, and literally he was not coming down, but rather he was flying gradually downwards and outwards. Okay, so now he was no longer afraid. अब बिल्कुल भी सीगल को डर नहीं लग रहा था, क्योंकि उसके पंख खुल चुके थे और अब गिरने के बजाय the seagull was literally flying. अब वो धीरे धीरे जो है उड़ रहा था. अब उसके अंदर का वो डर भी जा चुका था. He just felt a bit dizzy. Dizzy means an uncomfortable feeling of spinning around and losing one's balance. That is what in Hindi we call it sar chakrana, because that was the first time the seagull was experiencing this type of, environment. So that was bit, dizzy for that young seagull. Then he flapped his wings once and he soared upwards. Ga ga ga, ga ga ga, ga cola. His mother swooped past him, her wings making a loud noise. Now what happened? Now all of a sudden, no fear at all, no monstrous terror at all. Now this young seagull was literally enjoying his first flight, and he was simply flapping his wings, and he found his mother flying past him, making a loud noise with her wings. He answered her with another scream. Then his father flew over him screaming. He saw his two brothers and his sister flying around him, coveting and banking and soaring and diving. Now what happened? This young seagull all of a sudden found his whole family, he found all his family members around him and enjoying with him. In a way, they were appreciating this, first flight of this young seagull. Father was happy, his two brothers and sisters, and they were also in a way playing with him. Coveting means to leap means a sudden change in the movement, and banking means flying with one wing higher than the other. Soaring and diving means all sort of different type of, means these all are actually the art, part of art of flight. उड़ने की कला है ये सारी. Coveting, banking, soaring and diving. So the whole family members, they all were very happy. Then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly, and commended himself to dive and soar and curve, shrieking shrilly. Then all of a sudden that that thought that he could not fly all of a sudden vanished away from his mind. Now he started praising himself. I could also fly, I could also dive, I could also soar, I could also curve. And he also started making a lot of loud noises. He was near the sea now, flying straight over it, facing straight out over the ocean. Now he was literally flying over the sea, and he saw a vast green sea beneath him, and he could literally see that green sea beneath him. वो उस समुद्र को देख सकता था ठीक अपने नीचे, that green sea with little ridges literally chain of mountains moving over it, and he turned his beak sideways and cawed amusedly. So this was his first experience. So he was very happy, and he was literally turning his beak sideways, looking all around him, and he was enjoying that beautiful scenery and everything. His parents and his brothers and sister had landed on the green flooring ahead of him. Okay, green flooring means sea. Okay, so see, God has given this tremendous you can call it a kind of gift to these birds, that these birds can float on the water. They can, their legs will be in the water, but their body will be floating on the water. So that is something we call it God's gift. So the brothers, sister, parents, they already were on the surface of that sea. They were beckoning to him. Beckoning means they were calling him shrilly, in a very shrill voice. He dropped his legs to stand on the green sea. Now for this young seagull, this was the first time, this was his first experience with this green sea. So he thought that sea might be a solid surface for him, to land. So he simply, dropped his legs, on that sea. His legs sank into it, but instead of holding it, what happened? His legs sank into it. He screamed with fright and attempted to rise again, flapping his wings. So for a while he became frightened. What is happening with me? My legs are going down into the water. So he screamed, and he tried to flap his wings, but he was tired and weak with hunger, and he could not rise. Exhausted by this strange exercise. Now this was the first time he was flying. This was his first flight. So he was a bit tired. He was weak also with hunger. So he could not rise. Okay. His feet sank into the green sea, and then his belly touched it, and he sank no farther. Now finally what happened? His legs were in the water, and his belly touched the surface of the sea, but only that was the end. He was not going deep into the water. Means पैर पानी के अंदर जा चुके थे, और जो पेट का पोर्शन है वो पानी के ऊपर था, उसके और वो नीचे नहीं गया. Means literally वो एक तरीके से वो तैर रहा था. He was floating on it, and around him his family was screaming, praising him, and their beaks were offering him scraps of dogfish. He had made his first flight. and everybody around him was very happy. His family members were very happy. They were screaming, they were praising him, they were offering him pieces of dogfish, a kind of fish, and they all were appreciating him. And that was somehow he made his first flight. So, my dear children, I hope you have understood this chapter very well. Go through this chapter, and I hope everything is quite clear to you. And after this, you will watch a video. Actually, I found this video on internet, on YouTube literally, and it might be very useful for you, because this video is actually an animated video of this chapter, and you would feel quite relaxed and you would feel very excited when you'll watch this beautiful video. So enjoy this beautiful video. Thank you and God bless you.
The young seagull was alone on his ledge. His two brothers and his sister had already flown away the day before. He had been afraid to fly with them. Somehow, when he had taken a little run forward to the brink of the ledge and had attempted to flap his wings, he became afraid. The great expanse of sea stretched down beneath, and it was such a long way down, miles down. He felt certain that his wings would never support him, so he bent his head and ran away back to the little hole under the ledge where he slept at night. Even when each of his brothers and his little sister, whose wings were far shorter than his own, ran to the brink, flapped their wings, and flew away, he failed to muster up courage to take that plunge which appeared to him so desperate. His father and mother had come around calling to him shrilly, upbraiding him, threatening to let him starve on his ledge unless he flew away. But for the life of him, he could not move. That was 24 hours ago. Since then, nobody had come near him. The day before, all day long, he had watched his parents flying about with his brothers and sisters, perfecting them in the art of flight, teaching them how to skim the waves and how to dive for fish. He had, in fact, seen his older brother catch his first herring and devour it, standing on a rock while his parents circled around, raising a proud cackle. And all the morning, the whole family had walked about on the big plateau midway down the opposite cliff, taunting him with his cowardice. The sun was now ascending the sky, blazing on his ledge that faced the south. He felt the heat because he had not eaten since the previous nightfall. Then he had found a dried piece of mackerel's tail at the far end of his leg. Now there was not a single scrap of food left. He had searched every inch, rooting among the rough, dirt-caked straw nest where he and his brothers and sisters had been hatched. He even gnawed at the dried pieces of spotted eggshell. It was like eating a part of himself. He had then trotted back and forth from one end of the ledge to the other, his grey body the colour of the cliff, his long grey legs stepping daintily, trying to find some means of reaching his parents without having to fly. But on each side of him, the ledge ended in a sheer fall in precipice with the sea beneath. And between him and his parents there was a deep white chasm. Surely he could reach them without flying if he could only move northwards along the cliff face. But then on what could he walk? There was no ledge, and he was not a fly, and above him he could see nothing. The precipice was sheer, and the top of it was perhaps farther away than the sea beneath him. He stepped slowly out to the brink on the ledge, and standing on one leg with the other leg hidden under his wing, closed one eye, then the other, and pretended to be falling asleep. Still they took no notice of him. He saw his two brothers and his sister lying on the plateau, dozing with their heads sunk into their necks. His father was preening the feathers on his white back. Only his mother was looking at him. She was standing on a little high hump on the plateau, his white breast thrust forward. Now and again she tore at a piece of fish that lay at her feet, and then scraped each side of her beak on the rock. The sight of the food maddened him. How he loved to tear food that way, scraping his beak now and again to wet it. He uttered a low cackle. His mother cackled too and looked over at him. "Ga, ga, ga," he cried, begging her to bring him some food. "Ga, Kola!" she screamed back derisively, but he kept calling plaintively, and after a minute or so he uttered a joyful scream. His mother had picked up a piece of the fish and was flying across to him with it. He leaned out eagerly, tapping the rock with his feet, trying to get nearer to her as she flew across. But when she was just opposite to him, abreast of his ledge, she halted, her legs hanging limp, her wings motionless, the piece of fish in her beak almost within reach of his beak. He waited a moment in surprise, wondering why she did not come nearer, and then, maddened by hunger, he dived at the fish. With a loud scream, he fell outwards and downwards into space. His mother had swooped upwards. As he passed beneath her, he heard the swish of her wings. Then a monstrous terror seized him, and his heart stood still. He could hear nothing. But it only lasted a minute. The next moment he felt his wings spread outward. The wind rushed against his breast feathers, then under his stomach and against his wings. He could feel the tips of his wings cutting through the air. He was not falling headlong now. He was soaring gradually, downwards and outwards. He was no longer afraid. He just felt a bit dizzy. Then he flapped his wings once and he soared upwards. He uttered a joyous scream and flapped them again. He soared higher. He raised his breast and banked against the wind. "Ga, ga, 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 Kola!" His mother swooped past him, her wings making a loud noise. He answered her with another scream. Then his father flew over him, screaming. he saw his two brothers and his sister flying around him, curveting and banking and soaring and diving. Then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly and commended himself to dive and soar and curvet, shrieking shrilly. He was near the sea now, flying straight over it, facing straight out over the ocean. He saw a vast green sea beneath him, with little ridges moving over it, and he turned his beak sideways and cawed amusedly. His parents and his brothers and sister had landed on this green flooring ahead of him. They were beckoning to him, calling shrilly. He dropped his legs to stand on the green sea. His legs sank into it. He screamed with fright and attempted to rise, again flapping his wings. But he was tired and weak with hunger, and he could not rise, exhausted by the strange exercise. His feet sank into the green sea, and then his belly touched it, and he sank no farther. He was floating on it. And around him, his family was screaming, praising him, and their beaks were offering him scraps of dogfish. He had made his first flight.
इस चैनल को लाइक कीजिए, सब्सक्राइब कीजिए और सबको इसके बारे में बताइए।
Well, my dear children, I think everything is quite clear to all of you. You have understood this chapter, the first part, quite well. Still any confusion, you can ask me in the comment section and I'll be responding to your questions. So that was all from this video. Take care and God bless you.